So what I wanted to paint for you is, kind of what has changed, and what you'll see in here are not all, banking examples. Clearly, starting, going back about 3 decades, and talking about traditional banking was much easier. Branches was the main channel, and it was a simple thing banks had to say. It was tell a customer, this is what we sell, this is when we sell it, this is where we sell it. Now you come to our branches and deal with it. Obviously, what started to change is this concept of multi-channel started to come in. And interestingly, I put a couple of retailers here because the retailers have gone through a pretty significant disruption in their business, and we'll see the evidence of that. But clearly, in the 90s, the amount of success Walmart were having, the amount of success Nordstroms were having, talking about the way they manage their customer relationships, for example, the ground underneath their feet started to change in the 90s, in the late 90s, and they didn't realize the shift that was happening. And I've been in Silicon Valley for a very long time now, and the investment in the late 90s, the bulk of it was going into these e-commerce companies. Anybody with a bright e-commerce idea was getting funded. Didn't matter whether the model was going to stick or not. And clearly the most interesting and one of the most successful e-commerce brands that was to emerge out of all that investment was Amazon.com. And at that time, if you go back to thinking about it, Amazon.com started in the retail business selling books. And again, if you're a Walmart or if you're a Nordstrom, you're sitting there thinking, it's not going to impact me, and you don't pay attention to what's happening, in that space, and even the concept of being able to buy books online, getting them delivered, etc., was clearly new from a consumer perspective. You start to fast forward, and what you realize is that as consumers start to really consume services digitally, and these are where the examples of whether it's Apple, Google, etc., start to come into play. The customer experience really moved, and I'm talking about the non-banking customer experience really moved into the digital world. The Nordstroms and the Walmarts of the world had to really react because the retail business model had changed significantly, and they had to play catch up, and they had to figure out how they now adapt to this new world. We've got, one of the CEOs of one of the largest retailers in the U.S. was over in our offices the other day, and his biggest complaint was his stores are being used by customers to essentially look at the item they want to buy, get a feel for it, and then they right then and there they go buy it on the online store. They go to Amazon.com and buy it. And essentially, they become, the window shopping for an online retailer. And when you draw that line from that experience to what's happening today, so what was happening in e-commerce in the late 90s is happening in financial services today. I mean, throughout the day, you've seen the statistics of how much investments is going into fintechs. And these fintechs are, when we look at it, there are at least 3 spaces where the fintechs are getting the most amount of investment. One is in payments, any kind of a digital mobile payment. You see a lot of, and again, consumer and corporate type payments. We're seeing investments in that. We're seeing investments in credit, be it in credit scoring, be it in P2P lending, basically any form of lending, and then in wealth, and in the aggregation of a customer's financial data and being able to give financial advice to the customer, which is based on this concept of big data, based on this concept of analytics-driven automated advice. And again, we can sit here as banks and look at that and say, well, it's do I really care about somebody being able to do a credit score? Online, do I care about P2P lending? It's a very, very small percentage of the total lending market. But if you draw the line from where these retailers were in the mid-90s to where they are today, they are unrecognizable in a span of 20 years. unrecognizable as to where they are today. And then if you look at banking and you take a stock of where we are today, I don't believe we have 20 years to evolve, because the cycle of innovation has only become faster. And so the impact is much faster. So my submission to you is what's happening in fintech really represents a massive change in the way that that banking is going to get done. And I think either we become disruptive, or it will happen to us.